Hello and welcome to Say Hi to the Future, Ingenious Thinkers, a podcast aimed at highlighting the human side of ingenuity. With me today is Hoby Wedler, blind scientist, entrepreneur, CEO, and educator of the blind and low vision community. Hoby is a blind and visually impaired educator with over 10 years of experience providing blind and visually impaired individuals with new opportunities, tools, and encouragement to pursue their dreams, no matter how visual those dreams may seem. President Barack Obama recognized Wedler in 2012 as a champion of change for his work in creating opportunities for people with disabilities. Hoby, welcome to Say Hi to the Future. Quite the background.
Ken, thank you so much. It's a real honor to have this opportunity to chat with you and hold space with you and really think about what we all do that we love that makes us tick.
So Hoby, just one quick question, because I mean we're going to talk a lot about you and your background, what you're doing,
Yeah,
but um, you have a PhD in organic chemistry from UC Davis.
I do.
That how did you get down that path? Because it seems a little bit different from where you're landing now.
Well, yeah. So I just want to make a quick correction in the bio. I have done a lot of work educating the blind and low vision community, and I am passionate about that work. But right now, my work is really focused on entrepreneurship in the food and drink space and in this sort of non-visual sensory space, which we'll get into in a minute. Yeah, and it's funny, the chemistry seems a little far-fetched and a little out there, but it actually ties right back in. I originally wanted to teach a subject that students I thought would find maybe boring, like a boring prerequisite, like chemistry. I didn't want to teach upper division chemistry or anything like that. I wanted to teach freshman chemistry at a college or university because I wanted to get students excited about something maybe they didn't think they were excited about, if you know what I mean. And it basically brought me to meet my graduate mentor, who's a computational organic chemist at the University of California, Davis. And we were able to make that lab space fairly accessible to me with fairly minimal sighted assistance. And so I was able to, I didn't want someone to just do my work for me in graduate school and have an assistant looking over my shoulder 12 hours a day or 16 hours a day, however much we work in graduate school. I really wanted to do as much as possible on my own, which I was able to do. But ultimately, I had the honor of teaching several classes while studying organic chemistry at the graduate level and realized that I was spending a lot of time making my lectures accessible to my students who clearly did not want to speak chemistry, and in turn, in doing so, inaccessible to me because I would use a lot of diagrams and videos and things that were eye-catching to them that maybe we're not as we're not as eye-catching to me as a totally blind guy. And ultimately realized through that process that my passion was more aligned with applying chemistry to the world of food and drink and to the world of helping people better understand all the greatest things life has to offer when you forget about your eyesight temporarily. And this is not blind people per se. This is sighted folks as well. And really just working to make the world a better place than I found it in a way that I'm really really passionate about. And actually, I had the opportunity to start that work while in graduate school. We'll get into that in a minute. The other quick thing that I'll add just before we go on here is that um, in in all of that work, I never lose track of my science. So I am a consulting scientist on several projects in the food and drink world, and I use my chemistry every day in that work. And I guess the way that my work has dovetailed into really helping blind and low vision folks understand that they should be able to pursue their dreams no matter how visual they seem is partially because I was able to earn my PhD in organic chemistry. I feel I owe it to other blind folks who want to study and pursue the sciences to help them in any way I can, with making that dream a reality.
Well, that's an incredible balance. I mean, that you bring to Well, to yourself and to the world. I mean, working, that recognition of doing something for you in terms of your education and in giving back and helping others. So,
Thanks.
thank you. Thanks for sharing that off the top.
Yeah,
Hope you also call yourself a non-visual sensory guide to all the greatest things life has to offer.
yeah.
What is that about?
That's a great question. So, I will tell you very candidly that I was trying to figure out exactly what my brand was. I'd done an experience called Tasting in the Dark, which I would love to talk about a little bit later, which started with Francis Ford Coppola in the wine industry and got me really excited about helping people understand. We started with wine, but we've expanded out into all sorts of foods and beverages, getting people to understand flavor, aroma, and texture when not using the blindfold like a gimmick, but really using it just as a way to refocus their attention. And I was working with a business coach a while ago, and she said, it seems like what you're really doing is helping people understand the world. So I want you to get out there and start talking about that on social media. I got out on TikTok and Instagram, and in a few months ended up with 200,000 followers on TikTok, I guess just because people enjoy the content that I show them, which is little ways to enjoy the world when you're not necessarily looking at it. And it's crazy, Ken, how our eyesight is responsible for 85 to 90% of information we take in from our surroundings, which means that we use our eyesight to take in 85 to 90% of that information, and we have four additional perfectly good senses to take in only 10 to 15% of that information. So I like to say, hey, your eyesight is great, use it if you have it, but don't forget about these other senses that are out there that can deliver so much joy and opportunity and thought-provoking information that we often overlook. And
Yeah.
that's ultimately what I want my work and my next chapter in my personal brand and my work to be, is really working as this non-visual sensory guide and helping folks open up their minds and really create more of an open-minded way of thinking where we challenge ourselves to understand what certain things smell like, sound like, feel like, taste like, and we just explore and enjoy the world differently. It is so often that my sighted friends, great people that they are so focused on what their GPS is saying as they're driving or where they're going or what their phone is telling them, that they don't pick up on some of these smaller nuances which make life incredibly rich, incredibly important. And, something as simple as eating a guava and describing the flavor to folks so that they can go find themselves a guava and do the same thing. That brought me and about a million other people a lot of joy.
So when you say that, it moves me in a lot of different ways. I mean, one, you spoke to being open-minded, and I think that your lesson is not just about the senses, but it's about taking that breath, slowing down a bit, taking in more information, and that will maybe help you realize or open your mind to other possibilities or other people's possibilities.
What's incredible, yeah. So for me, I take this exact concept that I try to teach everyone around me, and I apply it to my business and to the work that I do. And it's amazing. And I'm a victim of it just as much as we all are, of getting wrapped up in the day to day. And I've got these 550 things to do, and we sort of lose track. But when we can let our minds really go into that zen, that space of, okay, what am I here to do? Things become more interesting. They become more top of mind. They become things that you get ideas that are, yeah, that are totally new and innovative. And I think that a lot of people in business, in your and my world of entrepreneurship, could embrace and use a lot of what we're talking about here to do their best results.
So talk to me a little bit more about the entrepreneurship side of what you just mentioned. As an entrepreneur, and it's 3+ decades for me. I think it took me quite a while to learn how to take a step back and understand or empathize with my customers or sorry,
Yeah.
my clients, the end user.
Yeah.
It seems like what you're speaking to, it does open up an incredible business opportunity or learning, if you will, for an entrepreneur or anybody in business, I guess.
Sure. Yeah, I think for me, getting to this point of really being able to take a step back and focus on what really matters and listen to the folks who I'm serving is, my blindness has helped me a lot with that. It's given me a different outlook on life. My parents, I'm so lucky that I was born to parents who have extremely high expectations of me, never ever lowered the bar. And I was able to go out and explore the world on my own and take responsibility for myself and my own actions and really learned how to take my mind out of the you know hustle bustle of it all, if I'm going to use that phrase, and just focus on what really matters. And I think it's helped me in business, and I'm not by any means perfect. I'm still trying to find what it is that I want to do and how I want to deliver. I'm about 8 years into my entrepreneurial journey, almost 10 years right now, and really, really digging in and figuring that out. But I love it. I love finding where I'm passionate and just trying to leave the world in a little bit of a better place than I found it. That's the point for
It,
me.
it, well, I think it's a point for me too, and I think it should be the point for many. So it's a wonderful talking point or something to raise. Hoby, you're talking about passion. You're talking about elevating other senses. Is this what you mean by sensory literacy?
Yeah, I think that we all can be aware of what our senses are delivering to our mind. And I use the phrase sensory literacy. We talk about literacy in terms of reading. If you're literate, you can look at a page, or in my case, feel a page of Braille, and make sense, make a language out of the shapes or dots that you're reading off of a page, right? So that's literacy in the common sense that we think of it. But I think about it the same way when it comes down to our senses, that we should be able to take in information from all of our senses and process it. And sometimes our eyesight is so dominant and can be somewhat domineering, so we don't afford ourselves necessarily the opportunity to use our other senses to understand and say, okay, why does the air? I live in a town that has been historically a farming community and a ranching community, and every Tuesday morning at about 6 a.m., the whole town smells like grain. A lot of people say, yeah, what's that smell, who've lived here for 50 years? And I explain to them, well, that's just the granary that's doing its usual weekly work of grinding grain in a silo. But if you're not paying attention for that, you might not notice it. That's what I mean by sensory literacy.
And does that translate then? I mean, or how does that translate to entrepreneurship, whether it's finding opportunities or delivering at a higher level?
I think it's all about being able to really understand your end user, your client, and what they need, and I don't love the word empathetic here, but I can't think of a better one. So I'll use that word just sort of as a placeholder. But it's a way of being more literate of what people and more in tune to what people need and want. And I think in some ways, if I let it, it helps me be a better problem solver. And every good business is really designed, in my opinion, to solve a problem. But it's this idea of using our ability to be literate to apply to really anything in your life, whether it's a meal you're cooking for someone very special to you, or a business idea, or a hike that you take to decompress in the middle of the day.
Understood. It's funny. It is so hard to teach empathy. And I think that what you're describing, or at least what I'm hearing, is by heightening other senses, you really are building other paths to develop and understand empathy,
Yeah,
not just through what people are saying, but
exactly.
you know, hmm,
In a deeper way, and you appreciate. aspects I've found with the people who I've worked with in this arena a lot, and especially in what we've seen on social media that's been very successful, is people will say, gosh, I just sort of lived my life and was depressed and had little panic attacks and these sorts of things. And now I'm stepping back and I'm learning everything that I was missing, and it's making me a more open-minded and happy individual. And my dream with all this, and this is something that I'd love to chat about once it's a little further along, but my dream with all this is to put together a community where we provide people this non-visual guidance in so many aspects of life, and a subscription-based community where people can come in and join the community, and then it becomes a total discussion board and place for sharing of ideas, and really creating this sort of ambiance of sensory understanding.
And when you describe that, I mean, you talk also about the fine line between art and science,
Yeah.
and sensory design. It almost that almost seems to be what you're describing here, the art being the insights of the community and the science possibly being how you extract and refeed back, if that's
I
even
think
English.
there's I think there's a lot of truth to that. I also like to think about art and science as being extremely similar in the food and beverage work that I do. So a great wine is made by a winemaker who, in my opinion, is just an artist that happens to know a good amount of biochemistry. But really, art is sort of the creativity that we have, and science are the tools that we use to sort of bring those results to life and make them happen and make them come together. And what I would add to that, I think, is that there's so much. I'll harken back to sort of something that I've learned as someone with a disability living in society, it basically as a blind person in a sighted world, is that so much of design has to do with making things available to us. And I'll use the example of a washing machine that is fairly accessible, but utilizes LED lights. You might be able to tell that I have one of these machines at home, and it's very annoying because I bought it just before washing machines and dryers were driven by, phone applications, which now revolutionizes accessibility. But it's these things that are almost accessible to me, but not quite. And if you think about all the designs in the world that are around us, you can get by with a lot of them. But if we just put a little more time into thinking about that user experience, how the product or whatever you're designing feels in your hand, these sorts of things make everything so much more accessible to all of us, you as a sighted person, me as a blind person, and anyone in between. And I guess my point is we are only as capable and we are only as disabled as society makes us. We can do anything we want. It's just what limitations does society put on us by virtue of design. And that's how I like to really step into the world of design and really thinking about straddling this intersection between art and science, just to make experiences and products that we use and interact with in the world more accessible and enjoyable to everybody. And it fits right in, that love of design fits right into this non-visual sensory guide because that is design.
Right. And it's funny when you're talking about that and you're talking about an understanding or lack of understanding, for those of us with full sight of how you actually can experience the world. It seems like one of the things that you're doing is just so on the mark in the sense of, well, we'll talk about it, several blindfolded tasting events.
Yeah,
And what are some of the learnings that sighted people tend to leave with after experiencing these? Because it seems like you're teaching the sighted not just about the other senses, but understanding that you really don't have any limitations, as your parents
that's it.
so confidently told you. You
Well,
don't have limitations, and teaching us is wonderful.
thank you. That's very kind of you to say that. And for me, it's not about the fact that I don't have limitations, although sometimes that is a definite takeaway for people. It is showing them how limitless their lives can be and tasting journeys can be when they're not distracted by their eyesight. So I do a very unique experience. They're they're performed experiences. They're a formal sit down experience, which we have done for as few as 10 people and as many as 600 people, where we sit down and we have a conversation first about how whatever product we're interacting with really is an art form, and it comes in the form of both an art and a science. I'll use wine as an example, really get into the understanding of how wine is a living, breathing art form that's always changing. Like I said before, we grow grapes in the vineyard and then they come into the winery, and the winemaker is just an artist that knows biochemistry and coaxes. They don't force the grapes into anything. They just persuade them in a particular way, and then they let the science happen. So I think wine is this beautiful connection between art and science. And, then we go aromatic vocabularies with different samples that they will smell only, that they'll find in the products, excuse me, in the products that we're going to be smelling and tasting as a group. And then I walk them through a tasting experience. And what people leave saying, I've done this for many masters of wine and master sommeliers and whiskey masters, they all leave saying, I've never had an experience quite like this, where my focus has just been on what is being said in the room around me and what I'm tasting, where I'm not worried about the visual input coming from my eyes. And what I've found with these experiences, they work really well for brands to offer to their ski brand or a food brand or whatever. And you want to provide an experience that either takes your item from a catalog entry to an experience that people are going to talk about for the rest of their lives in many cases. This is the right experience for that. It's also really great to help sales and marketing teams really understand their products better and then go out and talk about them. So it's sort of a good translation between hardcore sciencey R&D teams and folks who have boots on the ground out selling it. So it's a really good way to sort of popularize the technicalities of products and experiences. And it's also a great offsite for conferences where people are just interested in something fun to do. But the bottom line is that I said this before, I do it very specifically when we're not doing anything that they feel uncomfortable doing. We're not using a fork and eating a messy meal like some of these dining in the dark experiences do. And it's like, if you don't spill on yourself, you're a hero and you won. This is not like that. This just uses the blindfold, not as a gimmick, not as a toy, nothing like that, to refocus our senses and allow us to understand more of the world around us.
Obi, it's a fascinating journey that you're talking about, what you've done, how you're now, that transition to entrepreneurship and helping others. And our time has gone by quite quickly.
Oh my
So
gosh.
what I'd like to do is, just to finish up here, is to ask you a little bit about Emotitech,
Yeah, that's a
and
really
decoding.
fun
Yeah.
concept, actually. Emotitech is a company that I'm a co-founder and part owner of. We have an office in Italy. The majority of our partners are actually based in the Italian Alps in a region called Bolzano, and we have a U.S. company as well. So we're pretty new, about a year old, and we're just really hitting the ground running right now. And what we do is we essentially try to make places in the world better than we found them. So that's everything from seeing a drab wall, concrete wall, and working with someone who has a vision, say in a train station, and painting a beautiful mural on that art on that wall, and then pairing that mural with sound to make that space pop and to make it even more exciting. And there's another concept with Emotitech that I'm insanely excited about, and that is using biomarkers, hormonal levels, and these sorts of things to understand someone's emotional state when they're interacting with a product design or an experience design. So it's taking design thinking and really turning it on its head and saying, let's use actual biometric data to understand how people think about and understand and appreciate the designs that are put forth in front of them. So to me, it's an innovative way of thinking and hopefully a way of thinking that resonates with other people and does indeed solve a problem.
Obi, what an incredible thought to leave us with. I mean, what I heard is leaving the world a little bit more beautiful and accessible than the way you found it.
That's
Um,
what I hope to do.
yeah.
If I'm doing it right, that's what I hope to do.
Today we've been talking with Hoby Wedler, blind scientist, entrepreneur, CEO, and educator of the blind and low vision community, and named by President Barack Obama a champion of change. Hoby, it's been an absolute pleasure, and I thank you so much for taking your time to join us today.
Well, Ken, thank you so much. And folks can get a hold of me on social media anywhere. I'm Hoby Wedler on all the social platforms or at my website, hobywedler.com. And my opinion is let's have an abundance mindset and get to know each other. Don't be a stranger. Keep in touch.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.